What's up, engineering geniuses? I'm here today to talk to you about constraints, and they are basically these things up here where it says constraint, and we're going to talk about those and use those. And actually, we're going to use them first, and then I'll just run through them so you can know what's in your toolbox for constraining things. So, as you can see here, I tried to make a rectangle, and it was terrible. And I want it to be this kind of rectangle, 4 inches by 2 inches, and a rectangle with a corner on the origin. So I'm going to go through a bunch of constraints here to make this look like this. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to freestyle. So this needs to be horizontal, right? So I can make it horizontal with this constraint right here. So I'm going to click on horizontal constraint. Now it's selected. Anything I click on after this point is now horizontal. So I'm going to click on this line, and now it's horizontal. It's down there. You can't see it, but she's there. So that's I'm off to a good start. And if it's a rectangle, this side should be parallel to that side. So I could just make it horizontal, but I'm going to make use of a different tool, and that is the parallel tool. So you click on two lines, and it makes them parallel. So click on this line, click on this line, and now they're parallel, and you can see the constraints. Okay, so I believe I can click on this line and drag it, right? I can drag it, but it keeps the constraint that this line and this line are parallel. I bet you didn't know you could move stuff with a sketch, but you actually can click and drag. I can make this go higher. That's great. That keeps everything lined up. But what I cannot do, no matter how much I drag this, I cannot make those two lines not parallel. So we're doing pretty good. So let's make this line vertical. So go to the vertical constraint, and it isn't going to let me do that. So that's fabulous. It says I'm going to over constrain the sketch. So that was because this line was selected. I'm sorry, this line was selected, and I clicked on vertical constraint. So let me back out of that and just talk to you about something different you can do. You can click on something and then a constraint. So I'm going to click on this line. It is selected, and now when I click on the vertical constraint, it makes it vertical. And I'm going to make this guy vertical as well. All right, so there is my rectangle. So I can drag this, but no matter what I do, I'm going to have a rectangle, right? So this is it's fully constrained. It is a rectangle, but I need to make it a specific size. So I'm going to dimension this side and make it 4 inches, and this side and make it 2 inches. And then it should be fully constrained, meaning I cannot drag or move anything. So, oh, by the way, here's another constraint. When you mouse over things, you can see constraints, and it shows basically that this line segment and this line segment have to touch each other, and that is called our coincident constraint. So I'm going to go to dimension to make this 4x2. Sorry, I'm just kind of going all over the place. So I'm going to click on this, and I'm going to make that 4 inches. Let me zoom out a little bit. All right, so that is 4 inches. And what that means is I cannot move this anymore, right? Because this has to be 4 inches. But what I can do is change this size, right? So now I'm going to go to dimension and make that 2 inches. And now when I go to move this, it's not going to let me. So now I have a fully constrained 4-inch by 2-inch rectangle. So let's just go through the tools. There's a couple of types of constraints. So the first ones we did were geometric constraints. That's right here. And then the second set we did were dimensional constraints. So I'm just going to mouse over these. You can do that yourself. But just these buttons. First, it can automatically constrain or do dimensions, which that happens occasionally as you're making a sketch. You can do this to show constraints. So if you click this and then click on a sketch portion, it'll show you the constraints. And then this will talk about constraint settings. So just setting how much you display, all that stuff. You can click on that and go through that on your own. Now there are 12 geometric constraints, and we've done a majority of them already, or not a majority, but a good portion of them. So we're just going to look at these really quick. So coincident constraint, it locks two line segments or points together. So there's a coincident constraint right there at that corner, making sure that this side and this side touch each other or coincide. This is your collinear constraint, so it makes two line segments be on the same line. We have not used that yet. This is your concentric constraint, and it basically takes two circles and makes them concentric. It would basically give them the same center point, so they would be nested one inside the other. Fix, this takes a point or a curve and tells it that, hey, you cannot move. No matter how much things happen, you have to be fixed. This is a parallel constraint. We did use that. It could set two line segments parallel or more to each other. Could be more than that. This is my perpendicular constraint, meaning two line segments meet at right angles. I could have done a perpendicular constraint on these guys, but I did not. There's a horizontal constraint that makes a line segment horizontal. We did use that down here. Vertical constraint makes a line segment vertical. We use that on this guy. Tangent, that basically makes a line segment touch a curve in a tangent type of intersection. We can talk more about that later. Smooth, it makes a curve smooth. Again, we haven't used that yet. Symmetric, it can essentially make sure that you have forced symmetry across a line of symmetry. And then finally, equal, it can take circles and arcs and make sure that, and lines, and make sure that they have the same length or circumference. So lots of different constraints, and you'll be doing some of this on your project today on 1.3.6, I believe it is. All right, so let's do one more cool thing. So polygons, you have done this before with your slider block, and let's say I want to make an octagon that is that's 1 inch all the way across, so from edge to edge. I'm going to set that up. So I'm going to go to rectangle. You're like, what do you mean a rectangle? I'm making an octagon. Well, if you click on the rectangle menu down at the very bottom, guess what? Polygon. And you can set the type of polygon, circumscribed or inscribed. And you'll have to talk to me about the difference there. But basically, if you know the distance from the center to an edge, so kind of like the radius of the polygon, you're going to want to make the inscribed version. But we know the distance basically all the way across, so like the diameter of the polygon, so from one edge to the other. So we're going to make a circumscribed polygon, and we're going to make it an octagon, so set the size to 8. So you're going to click where you want your center to be. Sorry, I clicked done before I did that. So I want it to be centered in the rectangle, and you see it kind of automatically dimension and constrain that for me. So click there, and then I can drag out the sides, and I'm going to make it all wonky looking. I want it to be regular, but I'm going to make it all wonky on purpose. So there we go. That is not at the correct angle, nor is it at the correct size. So let's get it at the correct angle. I want this thing to be lined up parallel along 4 edges. So this to this, this to this, this to this, and this to this. So I'm just going to do a parallel constraint. You can see some constraints that they've already put on this bad boy to make sure the vertices meet. But I'm going to do the parallel constraint. Actually, you know what? No, I'm not. I'm just going to do one of these because I am going to go crazy. So I go to vertical constraint, and if I make this side vertical, it should line everything up. Shazam! But I think it might have moved it, so that's unfortunate. But we can work on that. I don't know if it moved it or not, but we can take care of that. So I'm going to use dimensional constraints for the rest of this. So I'm going to go to dimension. I'm going to go from the top to the bottom, and I'm going to make it exactly an inch. So that makes it an inch from one edge to the next. Now, I'm still not sure that this is centered along this side and this side, so I'm just going to dimension that. So dimension from here to here, and it was not tragic. So when I made that side vertical, it moved it, so that's unfortunate, but I can fix that. So that needs to be an inch up, right? Halfway up the 2-inch side. So make that an inch, that's good. And then I'm going to dimension from here over to here. And again, it was off just a little bit because it should be 2 inches in from that left edge to make it right there in the center. And that did not do what I wanted it to do, so that's great. I can fix that. So I'm going to change that. Apparently I need to make some more constraints there, because when it made that thing 2 inches that way, it just grabbed everything with it, and that is not what I wanted. So now I'm going to make this side horizontal and really hope that works. There we go. So I had some bonus content there with some unpredictable things that happened, and that is going to happen when you are constraining a sketch. You might realize, you might assume there's a constraint there that isn't, and then when things go crazy, like when that rectangle went nuts on me, you need another constraint. So this has been a brief introduction to constraints, and now I think you're ready to start working on 1.3.6 on your own. Thanks, guys.